One thing I want to do right quick is thank First Baptist Church for letting us have this meeting here. There's nowhere in the city that we have this kind of capacity. And so for their gracious offering of this space, we're very thankful. Also, we want to be thankful for the staff that has come in specially to do all the audio, video. They are here on their time, and we are certainly appreciative of all their work, so I appreciate a good hand for them. We're in a monumental stage right now. We're a city that the people have never gotten together like this that I know of. And by the way, I should have told you my name is Ken Verbal. I've been a resident of the peninsula for 47 years. Raised my family and have buried a couple of my family here. And so I have a great stake in my heart for this city. I love it. And we have a tremendous opportunity here. And I hope we can wrap our arms around it. And I know by your interest that you've shown tonight, you feel the same way that I do. There's a great interest in what we're talking about. I do want the mayor to say just a minute of information. However, I do want you to realize we are not a city committee. We are a committee of the citizens. And we do not receive any money from the city other than they did pay for the original appraisal on the property, which they had already committed to before we got involved. And then they did put a small budget for us to do some direct mail. And that's it, nothing else. All of the signs and everything were all paid for by the committee. And so I do want to say something before the mayor starts. We had used in the beginning a formula that hopefully people would give 1% of their property value, perceived property value. And so we all, as a committee, committed to that. And all of the committee has donated 1% of their property value. And so I just wanted you to know we put our money where our mouth is, as the old saying goes. So now I'm going to let the mayor speak for just a minute, and then we're going to get down to serious business.
Thank you. It is amazing to stand here and to see the number of people who take such pride in their city that they would come out on a Monday night where weather isn't all that great and you got other things to do, and to stand up and say that y'all want to be involved in this. I very much appreciate that. I love to see when people have pride in Hendersonville like this and want to get involved. I really do need to thank these people that are behind me, though. This is a committee that nobody appointed them, nobody went out and asked them, nobody went out and pulled them or forced them to come to a meeting. This is a group of people who said, we need to do this. And I appreciate it very much. The city and its history, the best gift we've ever been given is a piece of property that cost $110,000. That happened about 25 years ago. We've got some folks over here that want to essentially give us a gift that's worth $3 million, and we appreciate everything y'all have done. Please help them do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank everybody for coming out here. We do recognize you're giving away your time, and we do appreciate it. I wanted to start tonight, just introduce myself. My name is Jeff Cundiff. I am a resident of Hendersonville, Tennessee. I've lived here for over 30 years. I'm a civil engineer by training, and I take great pride to call this town my home. Tonight, if you don't mind, would you pull up the agenda? Thank you. What we're going to do is we're going to review the purpose of why we're here, give you a little bit of background history on how we got to where we are today, talk about a vision for the property, and then discuss the nuts and bolts details of how we're actually going to pull this off. If you would, please advance the slide. So our purpose together is we are seeking your support to purchase the Beatty property as a community passive open space. A lot of people have asked, well, why is this important? Well, it's important to each one of us probably for a different reason. But for me, it's important because growing up here, we had the benefit of a wonderful quality of life due to the active parks in our community, but also the open space that existed. Today, as development occurs, we are slowly losing that open space. And this property is one of the last large tract of land on our peninsula that we could potentially preserve forever, intentionally, for all generations, that we could enjoy it. So all of our kids, and no one would have to worry about it. And they would always have a place to go play. We were able to go biking and hunting and motorcycle riding and everything else around here. And we want to give whatever the community wants, those opportunities for people to get outside and enhance their quality of life. We want to be able to protect that and give that to future generations. And how are we going to get there? The only way we're going to get there is with your support. So we need pledges, and that's why we are here tonight. We are not here to ask for money at this time. We are here to ask for you to pledge an amount that you are comfortable with towards this cause. With these pledges, we would then be in a position to go negotiate for the purchase of the property. But without the pledges, we are not in a position to do that. So again, the way that you would pledge simply by going to the website. There's a link on there that you can pledge. If you have already pledged, you can pledge again, and that amount would be added to what you previously pledged if you feel the need to do so. We have cards available that everyone should have had an opportunity to get when they came in the door. And please feel free to fill those out. There's baskets to drop them in on the way out. And you can, that's it, right? So, a little bit on the format of how we're going to do this. We're going to give you a quick presentation, as I've said, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. So we have a microphone down here in the front, and we'll form a line at the end, give people the opportunity to ask questions, and we'll try to respond to as many questions as we have in the allotted time we have to be here. If you would prefer to write a question down, feel free to do so, and you can write it on the blank card and turn it in. And we'll try to address those at the end by reading them or responding to them up here. And if we run out of time, put your email address on there, and we will email you a response. So, next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So just to back up a little bit, give you a little bit of history. Some of it's been touched on already. This property was once owned by the Beatties. They sold it to, I guess Web Partners sold it in 2016 to Destiny Real Estate Ventures. They currently own this property. There was a developer earlier this year that came before the city and asked to rezone it. They were looking for a higher density on the lower 35 acres. That plan, that PUD as you would call it, was actually denied. Since then, Destiny Real Estate has drawn up a residential plan for the property, which is based upon straight zoning. It has not been, it was presented to the city, but it was deferred. Therefore, no action has been taken upon that plan. As Jamie mentioned, the city does not have the funds to do this at this time. So our committee got together after our last community meeting at the Peninsula Church. The people that were interested that were there got together and we formed this committee. And this committee has worked very hard, as Ken stated, to try to get the word out so everybody can be aware of what we're trying to do here. There was different things that were discussed early on. You know, can we go get grants? Can we get other trusts or things of that nature to contribute to our cause? And due to the nature of this development, there are several interested parties, as we understand, in purchasing this property. So, time is of the essence. We've got to do this now. So, our first attempt is to say, well, we've got 3,800 plus homes here on this peninsula. If we all band together and we pitch in, maybe we can pull this off. And we really think we can, because this is truly an investment in your livelihood and your community. If you would go to the next slide. If you'll leave this one up for a minute, I'd appreciate it. So, just to back up, where is this property? This property is located basically in the heart of the Indian Lake Peninsula. But as you see, it is in the heart of Hendersonville. It is not that far from Main Street, and it is a place for the whole community to enjoy. It's, I think someone calculated, 3.5-minute drive from Main Street down to this property without school zones. Let me see this. You know, we've got some great green spaces throughout our city. You've got the active parks up here in the north. You've got the parks down on the other peninsula. But this is it. This is the last one for this side. And I just want y'all to recognize that. And when you really see it in perspective on how big of a piece of property it is, it really does impress everybody. And our whole city, we need more green space. I mean, we are growing, and we need places for us to go. Growing up here on the lake, you used to go out there and you'd have the whole place yourself. You can't do that. I don't even go out during the weekend. You got to wait till the weekday. So, next slide, please. So this is the property. Most of you know about the lower 35 acres located at the intersection right there at the four-way stop. It's the beautiful green space that we've all come to love and drive by and watch deer in. There's also 38 acres wooded property perched up on the hill back behind this. That 38 acres provides great viewpoints, as you saw earlier in the drone videos, and we'll show a couple more later, of really how magnificent this is and how significant it can be to our community. Next slide, please. So how are we going to do this? We're going to purchase the land. We're going to create a community open space, and then we're going to protect it and then donate it back to the city for them to maintain. Next slide. I just want to point out, this is for all of Hendersonville. You know, we do need more green space, and, you know, we receive support from all over town because people recognize that it will benefit us all as a whole. Next, I'm going to go through a few aerial images for those that may have come in late and didn't get a chance to see the drone video that outline the property. And as I do this, I'd like for you to envision what you'd like to see there and think about what it could be if we all band together on this common goal. As you can see, I'm going to get the point out here. This green outline here is the lower 35 acres. You've got Berry Hill subdivision off to the left. This is the large bend in East Drive right here, and the stop sign's over here to the right. The wooded tract of land is up here on the hill, perched up above the whole peninsula, and it's outlined here. Next slide. This is looking back towards the stop sign from up on top of the wooded property. You can see East Drive here and Indian Lake Road with Berry Hill on the right, Cherokee Road off in the distance with Drake's Creek coming in here to the main channel of the lake. Next slide. What you're looking at here is down towards the tip of the peninsula. So perched up here on the hill, on the top of the 38 acres, this body of water right here is actually the Stark Knob area. And then it's hard to see in this picture, but it goes all the way down to the tip where the residents live, all the way down at the end of the peninsula. This is actually looking back over towards the east, like over towards Cumberland Hills Drive is down here below. You got Inlet Drive, and this is old Jeff Jarrett's house perched up there on the hill. But as you can see, it's just a significant, beautiful piece of property right here in our backyard. And I wanted to put this up there just literally because it's winter. And I don't want anybody to forget how beautiful it is around here in the spring and the summer. So think about that. You know, once we buy this property, you know, will we be able to implement your vision for it? Can you imagine your family enjoying this property? But before we talk about what your vision may be, I wanted to kind of back up and give you a little bit of background on what the alternative could be, just so everybody understands what the baseline is and where we are today. And so what we've done is we went back. This property is zoned single-family residential. It is set up for about quarter-acre to third-acre lots. Based upon that, we put together a plan. This is not a plan that the developer has put in front of the city. This is a plan that we put together just to illustrate what the owner has the right to do. This plan represents about 200 homes. I think we actually got 206 on it, to be exact. It also illustrates the major thoroughfare plan, which is a plan that the city commissioned a number of years ago that did a traffic study which suggested that we should realign Indian Lake Road and East Drive and make it kind of a thoroughfare. That's a different topic, but that is probably one of the conditions that would be placed upon a developer as they would be brought to the table. They would still have to secure some additional property from the adjacent property owners, but if you drive into Berry Hill, and you can kind of actually see where the future road was planned through that development. It would end up generating a few new stop signs that, you know, we would need to control for the safety of all of our residents. So we're not against development, but we are here to offer up an alternative solution. And we're not against the seller of the property, you know, making a profit. That we are here to offer him a better package for everyone, for him, for the residents, and for all future generations. If you would go to the next slide. So what could this be? Our goal is to purchase this property, but we got to get your pledges. So what we've envisioned thus far is to create a community passive open space park. And what that is a park that emphasizes the protection of the natural environment and it with minimal improvements necessary to utilize the property. Some just general ideas that have been discussed amongst the group and on Facebook and on other platforms have been doing nothing with the property, leaving it just like it is today, and maybe just baling hay for the police horses, up to hiking trails or walking trails, maybe a pavilion, a nature preserve for wildlife and or flowers, community gardening, mountain bike trails up on the hills, and then, you know, a small parking and or restroom facility just to support those passive activities. It has been very consistent amongst everybody that they're not looking to add an active park down here with ball fields and lights and other things that would generate a lot of traffic or, you know, congestion in our peninsula. That has been consistent amongst the group and inconsistent with our mission here. Now, I want to point out that there's been over 150 years worth of research done on relative to parks and property values. There's such thing as approximate principle that, it states that they have studied this stuff and gathered all this information up for over 150 years that shows that your location and your property values can be impacted by the proximity to a park system, and a quality park at that. And due to the nature of our peninsula, the peninsula particularly will be impacted one way or another, no matter how this thing gets developed. And we'd like to see a positive impact for everybody. Just one statistic to throw out there. Residents located adjacent to this property, studies have shown that they would see an increase in property values up to 22%. And that value decreases depending upon the distance you are away from that property and access to it, and the impact of that park on your exact location. So if you go to the next slide, please. So a lot of people have asked, well, what do you want to do with this? Well, we want you to tell us what we're going to do with it. And so our intent is to secure the property, get enough pledges, buy the property, and then hold a series of community workshops, not one, but many workshops, where we all come together and put our ideas on the table and see what everybody wants. And then go to the drawing board and take all that input and that feedback and put together a plan and present it back to the community for their buy-in and their approval. And then once we've got a general consensus of what would happen on this property, we want to go out and obtain grants and use those grants and other funding sources to construct those improvements. So right now use private money to purchase the property, and then use grant money later to develop the property. Once we get the property developed in the manner that we want it as citizens, so we control it, then we could restrict it with some sort of a deed. We could use a conservation easement or another type of deed. There's many different tools out there that we could utilize. And we could deed it over to the city for them to maintain, yet we would still have the comfort level that they would not have the ability to come back in and do something contrary to what we wanted. If we would go to the next slide. And it's really important to realize that we want to control this as a citizen group. We want to be able to take this property and do with it we want to implement your vision for this property and not someone else's vision, and have it implemented upon us. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Daniel, who's going to talk about some of the details of how we're going to get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, my name is Daniel Olivas, and if you could put the next slide up and just leave it. I live at 132 Bayview Drive. I'm an attorney, and I've lived here since 2012, and we moved out here. We lived in East Nashville, and we really liked East Nashville, but you don't get the quality of life there that you get here. So that's what brought me here. Now, I think mine is going to be the shortest presentation that we have. And look, everything depends on the pledges. There's everything that Jeff talked about is pure abstraction if we don't get the pledges, because our first goal, you saw that it was in phases. Our first goal is to buy the property, and that's what we're here about, buying the property. Without the pledges, we can't come to the table as serious negotiating partners with the current owners. And look, their eyes are on us, and they have made no bones about their intention, and it would be my intention if I was in their shoes, to put this to find a buyer and find the best buyer for them. And they are looking now, they've heard a lot of rumblings about us, They are looking now to see if we've got the horses to pull it off. You're the horses. And so without the pledges, we get nowhere. But assuming we do have the pledges, this is our plan for how we buy the property. Now, remember this. Mike Tyson said that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So we may change things. We may have to tweak. We may have to move because of strategy or because of efficiency. I can't predict those things for you. No one up here can predict those things for you. So what you're going to hear now is a basic, fairly uncomplicated plan. The first thing we do, you see that, we're going to form a nonprofit corporation. We do that under Tennessee law. And that I don't believe that's going to be a terribly difficult process, and I don't think it's going to take a long time. Now, the second step is we apply for 501c3 status from the IRS. That is more difficult, and it takes more time. You should anchor in your minds that that process is going to take between 6 to 9 months. There's been a new administration that came in since last year. That time could be longer, it could be shorter, but you shouldn't be deceived about the time frame that it would take to do that, okay? So that's going to be, there's some time that we're going to have to spend waiting for approval. Now, I told you it was more difficult, and we have a workaround for that. And the workaround is this. This has been a fantastic community effort. You saw all of the volunteers out. You've probably, obviously, you've seen the signs. That's all volunteer. All this stuff has been volunteered. And Mike Chrysler, who is a local CPA, he's got offices here, he's got offices all over Middle Tennessee, he's the real deal. He's donated his expertise and his time to help us fill out the IRS 1023 form. All right? Now, in the interim, if we get the pledges and we get to come to the table, we're going to convert those pledges to donations. We'll be partnering with an existing 501c3 to shelter the money, to hold it until we can hold it ourselves, until we get our determination. All right, so that's the basic outline of what that looks like, 4 steps, and then we buy the property. That's the 4th step. So not all that complicated, but the devil's in the details, and so the first detail is the pledges. Now, go to the next slide and leave it up, if you would. This is what I want to talk to you about, though. That picture is my daughter, Molly, and me, and that was the day we went door to door in Berry Hill, and there was other volunteers. Mandy Yates was there, Kim Fox was there, Jeff Cundiff and his kids were there, and we were talking door to door, and it was a cold day. It was December 30th, and it was Molly's birthday. She turned 11. You probably saw Molly out front handing out some stuff. Well, that was a Saturday, so the week before I had told her what we were going to do, and I told her how cold it was going to be. And she didn't think it was a birthday present. But it turns out that it was. Because by the 3rd house, I think it was the 3rd house, she said to me, she said she wanted a speaking part in our talk. So I said, all right. And if anybody that we visited is here, you'll remember that Molly stepped forward at a certain part in our talk, and she showed you what the potential build-out of the property would look like. And then she showed you what the green space, the undeveloped property that we were going to preserve looked like. And she was totally into it, completely into it, and wrapped up in this community service is what it was. And that's what this is all for. Because whatever happens here, win, lose, or draw, among us, win, lose, or draw, it's going to directly affect her future. And she's my future. She's my replacement. And if you have kids in your house, they're your replacements. And what a great example for the future to see the community come together like this. So Ken said it in the beginning. Wrap our arms around this. Pledge, and let's bring the horses and buy the property. Thank you. Ken?
There's not a whole lot I can say because I just can't. So I'm a salesman by trade for some 50 or 60 years, and I'm 80 years old, but I still have a 12 handicap in golf. So anyway, I think you've heard a good story tonight. I don't have a lot to add to this, But I do remember when we were at the Peninsula, Indian Lake Peninsula Church, when this all began and this group actually began to formulate. At the end of the meeting, there was a man in the back of the church that stood up, and I wished I could remember his name, and I couldn't. I thought I did, but I was wrong. But he made a statement that is so poignant that it needs to be said tonight. He said to everyone in that church, as soon as a caterpillar blade drops into the land at the Beatty farm, it's all over with. There will be nothing else. You will drive by that property. You will see houses. You will see streets. But you will no longer see the open fields that you see when you drive by now. So I'll leave that with you. Now what we would like to do is move into our question and answer